Okay, everybody, we're out here at my big shop, and just got here on the Iron Head, and I'm here a little bit early. I've got a lot of work to do. Got a laundry list on this car hauler behind me, but I'm gonna spend a little bit of time this morning working on that red Sportster I bought about a month ago after we unlocked the shop here. And this episode's kind of gonna be a little bit about just the realities of project motorcycles, and how I'll take my helmet off later, and how your plan for a bike can change dramatically pretty quickly while you're halfway through the project. And in this instance, it's not necessarily a bad thing. So we're gonna go inside and look at the bike and talk about it a little bit, and tell you guys what's going on. And if you've ever done any kind of project car or project motorcycle, you understand this, how the project can just hit the brakes and pivot to another direction, and that's not always a bad thing. All right, let's go. Okay, so here is the bike, and there's a cart of all the parts that I took off of it. And just a quick refresh on this, if you hadn't caught my last video about it. This is a 2001 883 Sportster that I bought about 5 or 6 weeks ago, I would say now. And I bought this bike at the time to be a second bike. I was going to keep this one, and I stripped it all the way down. This bike wouldn't idle, so I've got the intake manifold off of it to reseal it. And while I was working on this, I had a vision sort of stripping this bike down. So I bought a whole bunch of parts to put on it. I'll show them all to you. I've got a pile of parts over here. T-bars, a bait style headlight mount, this little small air filter, all kinds of stuff to put on this bike. And I wanted this to be pretty minimalistic. No turn signals, no handlebar controls. And the biggest thing I was working on was really cleaning up all the wiring. So I wanted to ditch this wiring and ditch the handlebar controls. I was going to rip this entire main wiring harness out, everything, and rewire the bike front to back with a really minimal wiring harness, and then just put a 3-position switch on the other side, off, start, and run. But things change, and what has changed with this bike is that I bought another bike. I bought a shovel head, and I'm probably going to keep the shovel head, and I can't really justify having 3 keeper bikes, so shovel head, Evo Sportster, and my Iron Head. The Iron Head is not up for debate. That bike will never ever get sold, since that's a family bike. But this bike, well, I mean, I've ridden it like 4 times before I took it apart. I have no sentimental attachment to it. All I really have in it is time and money. So in the interest of getting this sellable quicker, I'm kind of just going to ditch that whole plan and put it back together. We'll reseal the intake manifold, hook all the wiring back up, put the fender and the tank back on it, and just get this bike runnable again. And now we're going to head back in time to when I was determining that this bike had an intake manifold leak. And I just started the bike and sprayed around the intake with some carburetor cleaner and listened for it rev up, and determined that was what was going on, so I started taking it apart after that. Anyways, I have hosed down the intake bolts with some PB Blaster. These look pretty grungy, and of course you've got an aluminum cylinder head with a steel bolt, and I really hope that we don't have I don't remember what you call it. It's a galvanic corrosion, where you have like the dissimilar metals, steel into aluminum, whatever that nasty shit you get is that makes that a really hard combination to get apart. So I'm gonna try and take this intake off, and fingers crossed this goes good. And here's my rig. This is a 1/4-inch socket with a 3/8 drive extension and a 1/4-inch Allen. Give me some leverage. Probably should have put a cloth right there on the gas tank, but we broke it loose. And on this side, I know they make a tool for this, and I'm probably going to buy it, but this is just what I had right now. I took a 1/4-inch bit from a bit driver set and ground it down flat, short, whatever you want to call it, till it fit, and slipped a 1/4 inch box end wrench over it. And we're just gonna do the old double wrench cheater, and hopefully that works. I'm gonna turn the camera off though so I can concentrate on this. And bam. Let's see. Doesn't really look cut or damaged. Maybe a little bit right there. Not sure if that's gonna come through on the camera. Just like a little lip almost right there. But just pushing my thumbnail down into these things, these are really hard. They have no give left to them at all. I think that's probably what's going on here. They're just not making a good seal anymore because these seals are just old and hardened. So we'll order some more. And I think that's it for the day on this. But man, that bike already looks so much better with the seat changed and the backrest took off of it. Get the bars and the turn signals and mirror situation sorted. This will be a pretty cool looking little bike, I think. This is how that bike ended up looking at the end of that day working on it. And I would later strip it down in preparation for rewiring it, but as I explained earlier, just kind of changed direction. So everything in this video moving forward is me putting the bike back together so I can sell it. Okay, so we've got my intake manifold here on this toolbox and some gaskets. I'm gonna open this up and this will all be easier to do off camera. Just reseal this and then bolt it back onto the bike. I planned on staying late yesterday and working on it, but I ended up not. But at the very least, I've got one set of handlebars mostly wrapped up. The other side is plugged in and the headlights hooked back up. So you can turn the key switch on now and get headlights and turn the engine over. So we'll get this back on it so we can get the carburetor back on it and hook up all the rest of the stuff and then be that much closer to riding this bike again. And if it's not obvious when you're doing one of these, if you've never done it before, the beveled side, the tapered side, goes in, goes towards the manifold, and the flat side goes towards the cylinder head. And here's another thing that might help you too. Before you take it apart, a lot of times the old manifold gaskets will have the flange, these flanges right here, kind of stuck so nothing can move. But once you pop that old gasket out of there, then this becomes movable again, and sometimes that makes it a little bit of a pain in the butt to get it back on the head. So you can mark the manifold, or in my case, you can kind of see where like the bolts had been rubbing it, so it's more or less marked itself. Yours might be like this too, but if it's not, take you a little paint pen or paint marker and just mark it. That might make putting it back together and getting it all lined up correctly without destroying your new seals just a little bit easier. Okay, so it's back in there, and I didn't record this, but it's pretty straightforward. The back bolts, the lower bolts, you can see the manifold is slotted right here, so you can just unscrew the bolts and then slide. You can just slide the manifold onto those bolts, use them as like guide studs, and then I put mine on with these bolts still in the manifold because otherwise you'll never get them in. You need to leave these bolts in the manifold just backed out while you install it, and then tighten everything down. And pop the carburetor back up in there. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about air cleaner and everything. This bike came with the big Spam can, ham can air cleaner, and I'll be honest, I don't dislike the way that these look. I don't really quite get the hate for them. I don't know, they do kind of cover up the side of the engine, but I don't particularly find an Evo engine all that good to look at anyways. And the factory air cleaner for this is pretty big and probably flows pretty well, honestly. I don't know. But my big issue with it is that it takes up so much space and it's so big and it sticks out so far that it really makes kind of hugging the tank with your knees pretty difficult, and it gets, I hit it a lot. The couple times I rode this bike with the that air cleaner on it, my legs were running into it all the time. So I got this little guy, much smaller. Whether it's better looking is debatable, but when you are changing air filters, you need a carburetor bracket. Oh, got it wrong, but you get the idea. To hold the carburetor up so that it's not just flopping here loose, because it'll wiggle itself out of the rubber and fall off and run like crap generally. And you also need some of these. It's the part number. These came from TC Bros, and these are breather bolts. They go in here into the cylinder heads, and they allow the engine to breathe to get the crankcase vent that it needs. On the stock setup, the backing plate for the air cleaner has two big Allen head bolts that go through there, and they're hollow in the middle, so your blow-by gases come out and get recirculated back in through your air cleaner. If you just plug those off, then the engine can't breathe, and you're going to have a bunch of oil leaks everywhere because you can't relieve that blow-by pressure. So these just relieve it to atmosphere. Guess you'll find out really fast if your engine has a ton of blow-by that way. So we're going to put all this together. So here we go. Everything's up on there and mounted and tightened down. You can see now that, I can move the whole bike, wiggle in that. Make sure you put your gasket back here between the carburetor and the air cleaner bracket, and that port needs to stay open. These three are the ones that the screws go in. It's pretty self-explanatory and pretty obvious, I think. I will also add, I put a little tiny dab of blue Loctite on all three of these bolts. You might not need it on an Evo because it doesn't shake as much as the older stuff that I'm used to, but it would really suck to have one of these walk itself out and you suck it on through your engine. So that's on there, and we're one step closer to getting this thing back going, but it's 8 o'clock now. A lot of times I just come in early or stay late here at the shop and work on this stuff. If you're one of my customers watching this and you're like, damn it, why isn't Paul working on my truck? Don't worry, I'm still going to work at 8 o'clock like I do every single morning. I just get here at 7:30 or 7:45 and spend 15 or 20 minutes working on my own stuff, and I might stay 30 minutes or an hour afterwards and work on it in the evenings. And that's when I make these videos. I'm going to throw some spark plugs in this thing and service it too while it's in the shop, because it's still it's a new bike to me, and I don't know its service history. Kind of get the feeling that the people I bought this from pretty much just rode it and maybe didn't take the best care of it, and that's fine. I put the spark plugs in and hooked up the rest of the wiring on this bike, and then I was ready to put the tank on this thing. I put some gas in this thing, and I was ready to try and fire this thing up for the first time since I had taken it apart and put it back together. I tried a little bit more and never could get the bike to run, and I was thinking I had no spark. This bike actually got tipped over while we were working at the press one day, and I was thinking that maybe the bank angle sensor had killed the spark to this thing. So stuck a screwdriver in it and spun it over to see if I had spark, and then go from there in my no start diagnosis. Jump the spark over to the cylinder head with a screwdriver. I gave it a little huff of ether just to see if I could get it to bust off of that, and then I was going to track down a fuel problem if it would. I ended up figuring out that I could keep it running with my hand, but it wouldn't idle on its own, so I pulled the idle jet out, cleaned it out, put the carburetor back on, reset all the settings, and was ready to try it again. it's the end of the day now. We've shut the shop down working on trucks, and I'm here by myself just staying late to finish this thing up. And the bike runs good now, which is nice. So it looks like we had two problems going on. That clogged idle jet plus the intake leak that I fixed earlier. And I'm just kind of working on, finishing bolting stuff up to this so I can ride it. You'll notice that I put this sissy bar on. This actually was meant to go on my blue iron head. I bought this from sportyparts.com a few months ago. And it was supposed to be a late model iron head, stock style bolt-on sissy bar. And it didn't work at all. It didn't bolt on at all to my bike. So I didn't really feel like putting any holes through the fender of that motorcycle or the chrome plates on the side of that bike. I really just kind of want to leave that motorcycle alone. If you don't already know, I inherited my iron head. It was my aunt's bike, and she's someone really important to me. Her husband, my Uncle Rich, was very important to me. He's no longer with us. I've mentioned this in other videos, but I kind of just, I don't want to touch that bike. I want to just ride it the way it is. I was okay with bolting a sissy bar on to be able to, tote some luggage with me sometimes. But if I'm going to have to put holes through that bike, I'm not doing it. So since I'm probably going to hang on to this for like the next month or so while I finish up my shovel head, I'm going to throw the sissy bar on there. Kind of doesn't look the cleanest, but got this bag to go on there too. And this sure beats, especially in the summer months where it's hotter than, 3 inches from the devil's doorstep here in South Carolina. That beats wearing a backpack on my morning commute into work. So I'm going to finish buttoning all this up and hopefully have this bike rideable here in like the next 30 minutes. Check it out. It's all the way back together. And let's get this thing outside. I think I'm going to try and weasel it here past Chris's iron head and out the back door so we can actually get a look at this thing. This is a terrible backdrop for filming. There's just crap everywhere and you don't have a good background. It's really hard to get a good look at this bike. So let's get it outside and check it out. So the bike's outside, and artistic shots. I think this looks pretty good. I was gonna go ride this thing, but when I went to move it out of the shop, something's going on with the throttle cable here. If you have the handlebars leaned over to the left, like how they sort of naturally want to go when you park the bike, it idles fine. If you straighten the bars out or tilt them to the right, it yanks the throttle cable and tries to rev the bike up. So I'm going to play with that tomorrow, but I think this is good for now. This is a win to me. I think this looks pretty good. It's obviously not super duper awesome, cool, and extra custom, but this ain't bad. Probably good enough for me to ride, be happy about. We're gonna leave it here and I'm gonna go home. It's like 6:30 and yeah, I'm ready to go see my family. Alright, so the problem is that with the handlebars to the left, the bike will idle down, and if you straighten them up or turn them to the right, the bike idles up. And there's plenty of slack in the cable. Not really sure what's going on exactly here. I've gotten this adjuster loosened. Camera will focus on it. Probably won't, but excuse me, there we go. This is loosened as loose as it can go. When it's together like this, is loose. So there's no more adjustment left in this cable. I will say that the little ferrule stop isn't seated all the way down there. It's not by much though. That's like 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, maybe at the very most. So I guess I'm going to try and get that to seat down a little bit further. I might have to open up on this carburetor bracket. I might have to open that a little bit to try and put a little more slack in this cable. That's really all I need, is just a little more slack in the cable. Okay, I think I might have got it, so let's try it. played around with the throttle cable and was able to get a little bit more slack in it by adjusting it up at the handlebar controls, and I was able to just kind of zip tie it over to the bars and find a place where it's pretty happy. It still revs up a little bit when you turn it to the right, but with the choke off, it's really not that bad. So I rode it around a little bit this morning, and we just finished shutting the shop, and I'm gonna go ride it a little bit now and take a little bit of footage riding this thing and then stop and just kind of show it to y'all one more time, and that'll be the end of this episode. So we're gonna close out this video in my backyard. You probably hear the wind blowing through the trees above me. The storm's rolling in. We got a cold front coming off the coast. And just doing some morning chores. And while I'm out here, I figured I'd walk out to the bike shed. And there's the red bike that this video has been about. Let's shine a little light on her, okay? Normally my iron head is parked here if you're a regular viewer of this channel, but I rode this. I rode the red bike home yesterday from work. I rode my iron head to work, put the iron head in the shop at the big shop at my work, and then rode the Evo Sportster home. So it rides pretty good. I hadn't really ridden this bike very much before I took it apart. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. It's not like a super duper crazy custom magazine bike or anything like that. I'm not going to win, you know, Builder's Award or something at a show with it. It's really just some parts that I bolted on and cleaned it up a little bit. But what's my plan for this bike? Where are we going? How are we going to close this episode out? Well, I'm probably going to ride this for a month or two while I finish up my shovel head. And then I'm going to make a decision about keep it or sell it. And I can almost guarantee you I'm going to sell it. I really need to get some money back out of it that I spent on that shovel head. So the shovel head I feel like is going to be a keeper bike for me. And this is just something, you know, fun to kick around on, you know, over the summer and have a second bike in addition to my iron head. And they don't all have to be crazy custom projects. And I think that's the whole point of this very long video, is that not everything has to be this big, huge, take it all the way apart, tear it down project. This still looks pretty cool. And it's fun to ride. And I like it. And that's really all that matters. So that's the end of this one. Thank you for watching it. Sorry it's been so long. I know people don't generally have the patience these days for long videos, but instead of just splitting this up into multiple parts, I just made one video. Anyways, thanks again. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye.